talking to Simran Oberoi Multani. She is the founder of OMBC. OMBC is a wonderful mom bakers community. It is a 34,000 member community on Facebook, which is completely into healthy baking. Simran is also a TEDx speaker where she shared a talk on myth-busting veganism. She is recognized as one of the best mom group admin and the top mom bloggers for OMBC, she has also worked as a coffee for over 10 years. And about OMBC, OMBC is recognized for its work on social impact and space by the FT and Sheryl Sandberg in Singapore. She and the platform have been invited by the government of Karnataka to promote millet and healthy baking. And that's not all about the community. The community has been featured in, you name it, and they have been featured in all the newspapers that you have. The Times of India, the Economic Times, Indian Express, DNA, Your Story, Deccan Herald, Deccan Chronicles, India Today, so many more. So hi, Simran. Thank you
Hi,
for
Shilpa.
taking out time today to talk to us. We are so honored.
Thank you so much, Shilpa, for having me here. It's really my honor that you've thought the work that I do and the community does is something that is worthwhile to showcase with a broader audience. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, you have achieved so much. I'm inspired by you already. Reading about your achievements so far.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think it's also I think I think it's also about opportunity. For me, I have had a lot of good opportunities coming my way, and an excellent community which works very well together. So I think those factors are very important from an achievement point of view for me as well.
Okay. So before we talk about OMBC, the community group of healthy baking, let us learn something about you. So after achieving so much, I would really want to understand from you, what is that one code that you've always lived by?
So essentially, I'll probably share two. One which is one which I have, probably believed for myself through my own writing, and one which I have actually read about and used in my life often. So the first one, that I think has really defined a lot of the stuff that I do is this quote by, somebody called Ralph Waldo Emerson. Many years ago, I'd read it, and it stayed with me for a long time. It says that, what lies behind you and what lies before you. These two things basically are very small matters, tiny matters as compared to what lies within you. So I think that that actually shaped me in a lot of ways through very difficult challenges, through certain issues that I faced in the past, worries that I had about the future. I was able to kind of look at all of that in entirety and continue to tell myself that you are bigger than this. What strength you have inside you is bigger than what is happening to you in the maybe for bigger than what has happened to you in the past, and bigger than what you may face in the future. So I think that's something that has guided me all my life. The second one is something that I sort of wrote for myself when I was struggling between moving from a job into working into freelance or advisory work as a mother. Because I realized that there's a lot of misconception about mothers that companies and organizations have. So to make myself more comfortable with the fact that some of the perception is wrong, one of the things that I tell myself and I tell other women also is that motherhood is not it's not a measure, it's not a barometer of your performance or your ambition. So just because you become a mother, people assume that you will be less ambitious. People assume that you will be lower in performance. So it's not. So motherhood cannot be a barometer of that. You cannot be measured against that yardstick, whether it's about your performance or about your ambition. So that is the other thing that I constantly tell people or women, and I've also told myself a lot.
Okay. Now let us talk about the Facebook community OMBC. How did you begin with it? I mean, how did you get an idea of creating a community which has grown to so much today?
So I think it arose from a couple of reasons. One, as a parent who was struggling to find valid, credible information for my child, wherein I wanted to bake something for him which was healthy. So I would go, obviously like most people, I would go to Google, I would look for information, right? And I found nothing which was relevant for me.
Okay.
So I started doing my own trials and experiments in my recipes. So that was the first step, that when I'm finding it so difficult, I'm sure there are many other parents or even younger people who are not parents but they want to bake healthy. Where are they going to find their information? There should be some centralized source or repository where they can come and say, okay, fine, these are tried recipes, we can try this, and we can bake healthy from this onwards. So we can self learn. So that was one. The second was, whatever limited information I would find online was not contextualized to India. So it was more contextualized or applicable to a Western audience. Some of those ingredients are not even things that you will find in India. So I wanted to create a community which was using ingredients which we would get here in India in their weekly, so that it becomes easily accessible for people. So I shouldn't worry or hesitate to bake because I think the ingredients are not going to be available to me.
Exactly.
I should be comfortable. So that was the second idea, that let me create a community where the information that is flowing is specific to the Indian context. So that was the other idea. So basis these two reasons, I decided to create the Facebook community, and put in the initial part of it was me sharing my information only.
Okay.
So what I was baking, ingredients that I felt were working for some baked goods. Where would you find those ingredients in India? So those kind of things is how it started initially. And then of course, as people got to know about it, and I'm very happy to say that I've never had to do things like, why don't you add 10 members and you're going to contests like that. I know there are communities who do that, that why don't you add 5 members or 10 members and grow the community like that. We've never had to do that, because organically people have spoken about it, they've shared information about it, and they've asked their friends and family to join. So
Yes.
that is how the community grew.
Okay. 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 So it has grown from conception to a 34,000 member group. What are your
Right.
responsibilities and roles when you manage such a humongous group?
So there are 3 or 4 big responsibilities that come with that. The first one is that to keep the core of the group fixed, intact. So a lot of people, for example, I understand that they want to share just healthy, just general baking stuff, or they want to share just general cooking stuff, which is also healthy. But keeping the community centered around the purpose of healthy and baked. So it's not general healthy living. It's not general healthy eating, because there are many such groups. The idea is that we're baking healthy. So that's one. So to keep the whole community centered on the purpose of healthy baking, okay, and making sure that the posts or questions are centered around that. Okay, that's one. The second thing is to make the culture of the community very intact. So what happens is that, see, I think that a lot of people who run virtual communities will be facing this challenge, that you are virtual, right? So everybody's scattered all over the world. You are only going to interact usually by messages on the Facebook platform. So how do you actually create a culture?
Yeah.
You're not meeting each other. You're not meeting each other and chit chatting. You're not catching up. A lot of people don't know each other personally.
Yes.
So the culture part of it is the second responsibility. How do I keep a culture which, where members are appreciative of each other, members are polite to each other, members understand that there is a big reason why we are doing this,
Correct.
So those kind of things. So I have to work on those parameters also, because otherwise, like, it can easily get the fact that it's a very close knit community comes with a lot of work behind it. So that is the second responsibility as a person who's founded the community. The third thing is to make sure that what is the external image of the community when we talk about it. So today, a lot of people they have a clear association of OMBC with healthy baking. They have a clear association of OMBC with social impact work. There are people who will call us directly and tell us, why don't you do this for this NGO? We run an NGO. This is what we are going through. Is there some way that you guys can partner with us and help us? So that is the third thing, that as a member and as a founder, I have a huge accountability towards how people view this community, and the
Yeah.
transparency related to that. So that's the third area that I need to focus on.
Okay. Okay. So since OMBC is a mom bakers community, is it restricted only to moms?
Not really. Actually, I'll tell you the reason behind it. So
Okay.
when I started the community, I the reason I called it Oh Wonderful Mom Bakers Community was because one, most of the people who were in the community were mothers.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and secondly, because predominantly, sad though it is, but mostly women or mothers tend to bake. You know, so
Okay.
these were the two reasons why I had named it like that. Now, however, we have so over the course of last few years, however, the reason I didn't change the name was because it was too well known as OMBC. So to change the name would have been difficult. So what I did was I made sure that if there are fathers who bake healthy, they join in. If there are young people who are not even married, but they bake healthy or they're interested in healthy baking, they also join. So now
Okay.
we do have. So again, yeah, those still we are almost 90% are mothers who bake. So it's
Yeah.
still 90%, skewed towards moms who are bakers or interested in baking. But we do have a smallish group which is growing larger, which is men who bake, whether they are married or not married, and also women who are, baking, who are married, not married, don't have children. But the premise is healthy baking. So I'm interested in
Correct.
healthy baking, so I'm going to join.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that has evolved. Yes.
Yeah, I think, okay, okay. So, you have grown this community from almost zero to, 34,000 member group. Now, what are you targeting? I mean, what is in your mind henceforth going forward?
So going forward, I think the big challenge is that we have a lot of bakers who are doing social impact work in India. Okay,
Okay.
who bake healthy for Indian NGOs who or even not even if they're NGOs, but they're doing some kind of social impact work in India.
Yeah.
The idea for the next maybe 10 odd years, actually, if I can say that, is probably to grow it beyond India in terms of not membership based, but mainly impact that members make. So
Okay.
as of now, there are almost about 20 countries where we have over 500 members. uh,
Okay.
you know so my effort is going to be also towards those 20 countries where these members, whether it's 500, whether it's 200, whatever the set of members, is to identify how healthy baking can make a social impact in those countries also, at that level as well. So that will mostly be the direction for a few years now.
Okay. So talking about social impact, you have been recognized, you and the community both have been recognized by, Facebook itself, and, you have been called
Right.
over by Sheryl Sandberg. How was your experience?
It was very nice actually because so I'll give you the background for in November. So in November of the same year, 2017, in fact in October they called me up and they asked me, to join this event in November. So what they had done was, so Facebook basically tracks all the women-led communities in Asia, because
Okay.
Asia is actually the high growth area for communities. They have the highest number of people who are part of communities in Asia, and so they wanted to see how there are certain communities which are led by women and are doing different work. So
Yeah.
I and one more community leader from India, two of us from India. There were two from Singapore, two from Indonesia, two from Thailand. So we had from different countries across Asia. We had those all of us invited to this conference in Singapore. Now
Okay.
this conference was, yeah, and we were not told that Cheryl is going to be there. Because
Oh,
that of course depended, yeah, because that was something that they wanted to maintain security for. They said, in fact, even on
exactly.
Facebook we don't want you to share that this is happening. So essentially, they called us there. They recognized the effort, and when we reached there, we got to know that Cheryl will be spending time with us. She had read up about the communities. She read up about the work that we were doing. She spoke to each of us, tried to understand what challenges we face work with our communities. How do we plan to continue to sustain it? Because what's the point of social impact work if it's going to be just short term, right?
Yes.
You want to have some long impact. So that those were the conversations that we had.
Also, talking about another social impact work that you're doing, you have been invited by the government of Karnataka for your collaboration on, taking up
Yeah.
millet to healthy baking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about that too.
So the government, so millets as predominantly, as a crop or as a grain, as a food item, is very strongly believed in as a healthy source in Karnataka. So since I'm based out of Bangalore, of course, I also have some level of awareness about it. And government of Karnataka actually for the last couple of years has been doing this international trade fair, which is about organics and millets. So they recognize millets, they talk about farmers, who grow them, and invite them to share products in that. So as a run up to that event of international, which is the international fair, they'd asked OMBC, they'd reached out to me and they'd asked OMBC to do a contest showcasing millets in healthy baking. So we had over 110 to almost 110, 120 entries, and this was way long. So 2 years back, almost 3 years back, and into early 2018. And excellent, entries which came where people showcase different kinds of millets in baking. Which is not something that you would see in regular practice, right? In regular practice, you don't see millets being used in baking. You'd use it in cooking, but you may not use it in baking. So it was to showcase that this is so versatile as a grain. It is so versatile in terms of the range it offers to you, and of course the nutrition value. So why not explore that also in your other kinds of cooking methods like baking? So that was the premise of the whole contest. In fact, I'm happy to share that when the despite the contest, we also had some OMBC members who participated live at the fair also. There was a live cooking and baking contest even at the fair. This was online, but there was a live one even at the fair. And one of the OMBC members, she won the prize for use of millets in baking.
Oh, okay.
So is that even at the live event? Yeah.
Okay. So is there a shift? Are people still using?
Yeah. So in fact, I had done a quick poll. I think a year and a half back, I'd done a quick poll to understand how many people bake with different kinds of flours. Okay. So because one of the premises is to remove refined flour. That's the first part of healthy baking. The second part is to remove refined white sugar. So those are the two fundamental principles for healthy baking in our community. So for flours, I mean, if I can share that poll with you, maybe there are some different 40 to 45 kinds of flours, healthy flours, not wheat, not just whole wheat. This is beyond that. So 40 to 45 different kinds of flours that bakers are experimenting with. And it is stunning to see, the range. So not just millet, whether you're calling, like we use this kuttu ka atta, which is buckwheat flour, water chestnut flour, unusual flours like coffee bean flour, coconut flour, so everything can be used in baking. So the range is amazing, and bakers are using it. They are using it.
Okay. So you carried on with this in a TEDx event where you talked about not only healthy foods, healthy baking. You talked about veganism. So is there something that OMBC is moving forward to?
So vegan. So the topic of veganism was more personal to me. So it's not driven by the community, because we are not a vegan community. We are not even a vegetarian community, frankly. So so there are people who bake with eggs. So it's not a vegetarian community, including myself. But the principle of veganism and the reason for talking about veganism is because it's personal to me. Because I have I wanted to share principles of veganism that have worked for me. And the fact that it is, people think it's a fad. Okay, I wanted to change that thought process, that it's not a fad. It can actually become a way of life for you, which is healthier. That's one. The second thing about it was, the reason I spoke about it was because people think it's difficult. I can't find products. Veganism is going to be like something exotic. I'll have to go and buy ingredients. If you're making dal chawal at home, that is vegan. I wanted to make them understand that the concept of veganism is not alien to you. The concept of veganism also is not something that I have to buy unusual ingredients to become vegan.
Correct. Correct.
So, and the concept of veganism is also something that you can do at home. So yes, maybe I am not using milk because I will not use animal products. I'll use almond milk. Okay. So I wanted to tell them that you can make it at home. It is not something that I have to pay so many hundreds of thousands of rupees and buy it. So I wanted to basically simplify it for them and make them understand that it's not a foreign concept in your mind. It's not a difficult to do thing, and it is something that which is not a fad. So those are the things that I wanted to talk about personally.
Okay. What is it about Simran Oberoi, Multani, and Mythbusters? What is the relationship between the two? Because first you have a
That's
busted a
actually
myth of, you can bake healthy using alternative flours, no refined sugar, and now you're busting myths on veganism. So what is the relation between the two?
So I think the relationship is that's a very good question, because I'm still trying to wonder that, this has not been by design, it's not, sorry, it's not been by design or choice. It's just happened. Okay. So now that you're telling me, maybe I think what has, maybe caused me to, focus on something which is regularly thought of as a certain thing, is the fact that I have, I have been comfortable with breaking myths about myself also. I think that has worked for me. That I, so I mean, share this very often that if I can bake, anybody can. Because I started proper baking only in 2010, 2011, which is just 10 years. I know people who bake for 30 years. Okay. And I did healthy baking only after my son was born. So this is 2013. So only 7 years, right?
Yeah.
So if so my and I mean my whole understanding was I won't enjoy it. I'm
Yeah.
a very what should I say? I used to love studying. Okay, when I was a child, I was never into cooking. I was never into baking. When I was growing up, right? So it's not like so for me in my mind, I always thought that this is something I'll never be able to do.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
know, because I mean, if I don't have the interest in it, or if I don't have the inclination for it, how can I be good at it?
Exactly.
Okay. What I didn't realize was that sometimes interest can get created.
Yeah.
Sometimes your commitment can arise over a period of time.
Yes.
So that is the myth. So I honestly, I mean, if I can only maybe say this, that it took me a lot of time and courage to admit it also to myself. So I think if you can break those myths about yourself also, that gives you the courage to go out there and break myths that the world has created about other things. So I
Correct.
think that is probably where it might have stemmed from.
Okay, okay. So Simran, you have been working in the corporate scenario also for a good
Yeah.
10 years, and then now you are an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. So did you always plan like this, or did it just happen?
So I didn't plan like this actually. It's just happened. Also, I think what pushed me towards it is, to be very frank. So I spent about 11 years working full time in a
Yeah.
corporate role, and then what I did was that I had to take a break in terms of moving into freelancing and part time work, because our organizations are not suited for working mothers. Okay.
Okay.
So essentially it was difficult for me to try to sensitize the organizations that I was working with, and try to manage a small child at home. My son was turning a year and a half. So at that point in time, the only option I had was to see if I could move away from full time working, and try to create a balance in my life by doing freelance work or independent consulting work, and try to focus on Oh Wonderful also. You know,
Okay.
so so that is when it started. This was made of 2000 May 2014. So May
Okay.
or June 2014. That's when I started, started to do work. And one thing led to another. So, for example, I was baking healthy, right? But I was not selling it. So,
Okay.
a neighbor of mine, she used to work in a small, she used to work and manage a small cafeteria, which had healthy goods. They were focusing on healthy food, not
Okay.
bakes, but healthy food. So she knew about my healthy baking, and she told me, why don't you supply to my cafe?
Okay.
So that's how it started. So I haven't been selling it so far, but I can do it. If it's not a lot of work, I'll do it once or twice a week or whatever.
Hmm.
That's all right. So that's how. So I started supplying it to them, and their demand kept increasing. And then through them and through other friends, people got to know, and they started buying stuff from me. So I did sell baked goods for a short time. But after that, what happened? While I enjoyed doing that, again, like I said, you have to have the courage to break your own myths. I was
Correct.
doing
Yeah.
very well in my own bakes, but two things that sort of jarred in that thought process was that one is I was not meant for that. Frankly, taking a step back and understanding that I am not the person who can actually sell baked goods. Okay, to
Okay.
admit it to myself, because despite the fact that stuff was doing well, people were buying it. Now the reason for that understanding and acceptance was the fact that I was getting orders for the same things. So, for example, I'm making ragi biscuits. Okay, I'm getting that order for ragi biscuits over and over and over again. Okay, I should take, if I was a different kind of person, I would have taken that as a compliment. Okay,
Yes.
but for me, that was not a compliment. For me, it spelled the fact that I'm getting bored. Okay, I want to work with ingredients. I want to do something new with some ingredients every time. I want to create new recipes. That's
Correct.
when I decided I want to switch. I'm not going to, even day till day. I've stopped selling 3 years back. I still get calls, can you make this cake? Okay, because people remember that time. Okay,
Yeah.
but I stopped doing it consciously because I realized that I would again get pulled in multiple directions. So I started consciously focusing on workshops. So then I started doing workshops with, say, schools, with corporates, mainly, some of them are paid workshops, some of them are not paid, depending on what we are covering. So I
Correct.
do that, and I do a lot of product development work. So I do recipe development and product development work for large brands.
Okay.
So that gives me satisfaction because I'm able to play around with ingredients. I'm able to discover new bakes. I'm not doing the same thing again and again. So
Okay.
for a person like me, I think that shift from corporate, even from the corporate point of view, I was earlier working in, in rewards and in rewards compensation in HR in a particular area. I moved into another area of HR when I moved into consulting
Okay.
because I wanted to reinvent myself, because I wanted to reinvent the work that I wanted to do in the future.
Yes.
So for me, that constant change in what I'm doing, or reskilling myself is very important. So I
Yeah.
think that has allowed me to move from corporate to maybe becoming an entrepreneur in a more smooth way than it would have been otherwise.
Okay. Okay. And what, according to you, is the most important quality that an entrepreneur should have?
I think resilience. You are an entrepreneur. You will face challenges. You will face more challenges than the good parts. Some
Yes.
days will be good. Some days will be bad. Most days will be bad and difficult. But I think what will keep you going is if you're resilient about the fact that I want to do this. I want to do this well. And no matter what the challenges are, no matter what the how tricky the situation gets, I have to find a way out of it. So that resilience is what will take you out of it, because you will every time want to get out of that challenge, get over that challenge. It'll push you.
Yes.
So that push is only coming only when you are able to, you will get affected. So I'm not saying you won't get affected,
Yeah.
but you will bounce back.
Yeah.
That is your resilience. That is the most important quality in any entrepreneur.
Motherhood. You are a mother of two. How do you ace this balancing game? You have achieved so much as on date. How do you ace it?
So I think I think I've said this before. I know a lot of parents believe, and I'm not trying to. That's not a myth I'm trying to break. That children do like the children like a routine. Okay, I understand that. A lot of people tell me that also. That our children prefer routine. Okay, for me actually it's the opposite. No two days are the same. Okay, because of my work. So some days, so because I do consulting work also, so some days my work on consulting is more. Some days I'm spending hours in the kitchen, doing some work related to recipe development. So every day can actually be very different. So for the children, I think how that has worked is that it's given them a little bit of idea on how to accept any unknown. So they don't get stressed. Yeah, they don't get stressed about the day looking different. Okay, so for me, they don't get worried if the routine doesn't look the same day to day. Okay, so for me, I think that is what has worked, that every day I switch my routine to make time for the kids and make time for their work and make time for my consulting or my work that I do through OMBC. Then what I've realized is, your presence is enough. You don't have to constantly talk to them. you know they
Exactly.
don't have to constantly talk to you. The presence can be reassuring. And at the same time, the presence should be non-interfering sometimes. So that is the balance that I have tried to, though both my children are very small and I don't think they see that as interference as of now, but I don't want to I want to give them that space of independence.
So when you do this, and when you do your OMBC work, when you do your recipe development, or you're in a consulting work, do you ever, and you have worked in the corporate scenario before, have you ever faced mom's guilt, and how do you overcome it if you have faced it?
So I would be lying if I said I didn't face it. I have. So it's not like I haven't faced it. And I think most mums, or I think all mums, by virtue of being mums, they
Yes.
face that. The only way I have overcome it is to understand that a happy mom makes a happy kids. So if I am unhappy, it's going to show up. I think parents or adults think that we can cover up or camouflage those feelings very
Yeah.
easily. But I think children are very perceptive. Children actually pick up on a lot of things. So a change in expression, and they understand what is there, that there is something that is wrong.
Yes. Exactly.
So I think that that understanding. So it's taken time. even now there are times, when I'm thinking, should I actually be doing this with them instead of doing this, but I think what helps me is to talk to them. Okay. And
Okay.
I ask and I talk, and frankly, I mean, I talk to them a lot about my work, not for anything else, but I want them to understand that, not for them to understand that their mother is doing 100 things, but for them to understand that this is important for their mom to be happy. Okay. So
Okay.
I think, it plays both ways. I think as children, especially as children start growing a little older, I think it's important that parents are, able to share their, what makes them happy, and what makes them vulnerable, so that I want to do more of it. So I think once that becomes clearer, I think children don't, they don't guilt you out of it. Then they understand that, your mother likes this, and they, like I said, like every other child, your child wants you to be happy, just as you want your child to be happy.
Okay. So, do you want to bust some myths about, when they say that, after becoming a mom, it is either your family or your career?
Yeah, so I say this again and again and again, but I think I have done most of my great work after my kids were born.
Exactly.
And I think, so like I said, my son is born in end of 2012. So I quit my full time. Before, what was I before that? I was a consultant. I was doing HR consulting work, and I was starting to do something in Oh Wonderful. Okay, just fledgling work on it, right? Uh, and in so he's born, and after that, everything. So whether it is recognition about Oh Wonderful, whether it is recognition about OMBC, or whether it is my consulting work. So I do consulting work in diversity and inclusion even now. I teach a course. I teach a course to management students, accredited course to management students on how to improve diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So it's huge amount of work that I've done ever since I've become a mother.
Yes.
So, which is why, I think this is complete. I think, that is, I've spent much more time working on these areas than I have probably in my consulting career. you know
Correct.
so like I said, it's exactly how it is. It's all come to me after the kids came. So, and in my, like, I think, so if you, it's in your mind. If
Exactly.
if you want to deter yourself saying that I'm a mother, I can't do this, there's nothing that can change. And if you, if you tell yourself that I'm a mother and that's why I can do this, which is why a wonderful mom bakers community started, because I had a child who needed to eat healthy. That's why I started baking healthy. That's why I shared it on a, on a bigger platform, made it a bigger platform. That's how many other mums are doing it.
Yeah.
So, motherhood has been at the heart of it.
Yeah.
So there is, and like I said, all of the growth that it has seen, the community, or oh wonderful, or me myself personally, has come to me. All of my recognition has come to me after that. So I would never, I mean, I think in my mind, even if there was any vague, or small niggling fear that motherhood would make me make those decisions of choices, it's completely shattered. It's completely, in through my own life's journey, I've seen that that doesn't work at all. You can actually do all of those things.
Yeah, I know. So
Absolutely.
lastly, before I, wrap this up, I would want you to, share some tips or advice to women entrepreneurs out there who are listening to us today.
So I think, yeah. So the first thing, like I said, like you've already sort of mentioned, is that, you can, whether you're a mom or whether you have any other, family related, restrictions. I think that is not a restriction. Okay. You have the power to convert it into something which is, your strength. So for me, like I said, motherhood became the reason for me to do everything I did after that.
Yes.
So find that reason, so find that reason that will apply to you instead of thinking of it as a restriction. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's one. Okay, the second thing is, like I said, don't, I know this is not generic to women, but I think it applies to every entrepreneur also, is that don't worry about, uncertainty. My day is going to look different. I don't know how many, how it's going to be difficult. So in your mind, you have to convince yourself that, no matter how uncertain this journey is, I want to make it. Okay,
Yes.
because that is the choice is in my hands to make this journey.
Yeah.
And I'm choosing to make this journey no matter how uncertain it is. So like I said, some days will be very difficult, some days will be very good, sometimes your business will rise, sometimes your business will, fall low. You will struggle through that. It's part
Yeah.
and parcel of every. It is not going to be a standard monthly salary check. All those things will not happen. Okay. you have to be prepared to understand that your passion has to be stronger than your need to make money out of it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very important.
Yes.
Because I understand, entrepreneurs need to succeed. I understand businesses need to be sustainable, but no business can be sustainable if it is only driven by, the financials. A business without a soul, a business without a passion will not work. So, as a mother, as a woman, you have to be very clear on what your passion is and keep it at the heart of everything you do in your business journey. Okay, that
Exactly.
is the second thing. The third tip essentially will be, which has worked very well for me, is I am a very organized person. Okay, I it can qualify as being, maybe a disorder, but I am very organized. So this has become better now after the kids, because I've realized nothing can be planned. After the kids are born, no day can look the same. But even then, I have a very structured approach to how I'm going to do things. If I have 10 things in my list, all right, I am very realistic that I can't do these 10 things. These are the five I need to focus on. What time of the day I will focus on them? And what is the extent of focus? So, am I going to only respond to the email, or am I going to send a draft, a plan in place also? So that degree of planning, it sort of eases your burden. As a mother, I'm saying this, or as a, if you have small children, then being that a little organized in your approach, maybe in terms of, and also not beating yourself up that I have to do these 10 things. Like I said, prioritize those two things and do just those two things.
Yes.
You don't have to do 10 things in a day. you know
Exactly.
your journey of business, your journey of life, your journey of whatever you've decided to follow is very long. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
you will have ample time. So spend good time doing those two things, rather than spending little time and trying to do 10 things and then not finishing those 10 things, getting hassled,
Yeah.
wondering what to do, and then going hassled into the next day.
Yes.
So I think that is, the third thing I would probably share as a tip.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much, Simran, for taking our time to talk to us about your journey and your venture. We are so grateful to you, today. Uh,
Thank you, Shilpa. I had a nice time talking to you.
yeah. So everyone who is listening to us today, I feel that 2020 is a year of transformations. So in your head, if you are thinking of a transformation and you are thinking of one way to transform your life is to stumble upon OMBC and see the wonderful work that goes behind in that group that goes beyond just healthy baking. So yeah, and women who are watching us and have previously watched us, um, request you to please spread the word and like and subscribe to our videos. Thank you so much, Simran. Thank you.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thank you. Nice meeting you.